generations to come.
And welcome to the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News, and I also co-host the Down the Stretch radio show with Dave Johnson on Sirius XM Radio.
This is an unusual shot for me. I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports. I'm in a car at BWI Airport at the cell phone waiting lot. Here's my steering wheel. I'm in a red Mustang convertible. So at least I got that going for me here, even though this looks kind of weird with the shadows and all that stuff.
And you are an absolute trooper. You are better than me. I probably would have found a local bar somewhere, honestly, if it was me doing this. I mean, come on, Randy.
I should have thought of that. The clock was ticking, though, Zoe. I had to pull over real quick.
It's probably happy hour somewhere. You know that, right?
It's always happy hour somewhere, right?
It's definitely 4 o'clock somewhere. All right, I'm Zoe Cameron with First Racing, and we're ready to talk Preakness.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot to talk about, and I want to remind you that this show is brought to you each and every week by our good friends at Keeneland. Just a few minutes, we're recording this on Monday. Just a few minutes ago, they drew the field. As no surprises, their field of 9 with Muth as the 8-5 favorite. We're going to hear from Bob Baffert, his trainer, a little bit later on in the podcast. Mystic Dan 5-2. Randy, I was one of the ones that was on the Mystic Dan, kind of not bandwagon, but I gave him a good shot in the Kentucky Derby. But after that race, where he had such a perfect trip, and matter of fact, the Thoroughgraph speed figure numbers, no surprise, he ran the third fastest race in the race because of Sierra Leone and Catching Freedom. Not Catching Freedom, I'm sorry, Forever Young, went so far wide on the turn. But anyways, I can't come back with him because he had such a perfect trip. And I think the Baffert horses in Muth, and then a little bit to lesser regard is Imagination, 6-1. I think Bob Baffert's going to have a big day on Saturday.
All right, Bill. Well, I'm going to go with Muth in here. Bob's record basically speaks for himself. He knows how to win this race. He's won the Derby 5 times, and then he won the Preakness 5 times, and 3 other times he's won the Preakness. So that's a total of 8. Before he won a few single Preaknesses, we were wondering, does Bob know how to win the Preakness without running in the Derby? But yes, he most definitely does. And Muth has been working absolutely lights out. And it's a freshness case for me. There's absolutely no knock on Mystic Dan whatsoever. And if anyone ever thought that Kenny McPeek was not going to go, you were definitely on someone. There is no way in God's green earth that Kenny McPeek was not going to run in the Preakness. The horse has gone through a battery of tests. They've tested him from top to bottom, blood and all. Everything they could probably test for, they've tested for, and he's passed everything with flying colors. And he's also already embedded in that magical stall at Pimlico right now. So Mystic Dan is going to be a tough competitor. And I'm going to quote Bob on something he told me a long, long time ago. Because I asked him, I'm like, why do you always seem to win the Preakness after you've won the Derby? He said, well, the simple fact is the best horse most of the time wins the Derby. They're fit. They're honed to the nines and they're focused. And that's usually what the Derby winner comes in as, because you have to get them to a certain point to win the Derby. And he said, that's pretty much the key. You just roll on in there and don't do a whole lot with them.
Yeah. When you say that there's no way Kenny McPeek was going to miss the Preakness, right? That, when you're handicapping this race, I mean, and you know that Mystic Dan had a perfect trip in the Kentucky Derby. That's one thing. But it also troubles me a little bit because I think they feel sort of an obligation to come back in 2 weeks and run in the Preakness, right? And trainers, as we all know, can talk themselves into seeing whatever they want to see. And initially, Kenny was talking about how, as a 2-year-old, he tried to bring the horse back in 2 weeks in the Kentucky Jockey Club. It didn't work at all. The horse got sick coming out of that race. And, you know, he was saying that, you know, for that reason, he's tried to steer away from the 2-week thing. That worries me. And what we've seen recently, like way back in the day, in the 80s and in the 90s, you had the occasional red bullets and deputed testimonies that won the Preakness not having run in the Derby. But back then, those were second tier horses that were trying to jump into the Triple Crown and the Preakness, mostly Maryland based horses, but some others. And that's why they had such a poor record. Now we've seen trainers with horses like Cloud Computing and Early Voting, who were pointing at one point for the Kentucky Derby and might have possibly been able to run in the Derby, but were withheld to wait for the Preakness for various reasons. And the freshness factor has been very, very tough to beat. So for that reason, I'm with you guys. I mean, I think the 2 weeks for Mystic Dan compared to more rest for both Muth and Imagination, and for that matter, Tuscan Gold, is going to give them an advantage in this spot over Mystic Dan.
Yeah. And I know exactly what Zoe meant by that, because she was handicapping McPeak, I think, more than the horse himself. Kenny is a very aggressive trainer. He won the Preakness with a filly just a couple of years ago. And he goes, he thinks outside the box, and he's not afraid to run. I mean, he'll throw a 50-1 shot in a race. And if it's, just to see what would happen. So I think, I know what you're saying, Randy, but I think this is, McPeak just believing in his horse and believing that this is really not such a big obstacle, which is refreshing to see. If Sierra Leone won the Kentucky Derby, would he necessarily have run in the Preakness? I mean, it's all hypothetical, but the way things are going, you have to ask that question, especially with the trainers like Chad Brown and Todd Pletcher that, just love having time in between the races, the 4, 5, 6 weeks. So, Randy, another topic you brought up, I think I want to go back to. I think Tuscan Gold is the danger in this race. He's 8-1 in the morning line, and I'm going again by trainers. Chad Brown has figured this thing out with passing. I guess Tuscan Gold didn't have enough points to get into the Derby, but taking a horse that didn't run in the Derby and getting them to peak in the Preakness. He's won it twice with that pattern and finished second last year. So, handicapping Chad Brown and what he's good at, I think that horse is very dangerous in here.
Oh, I completely agree. I wouldn't be surprised to see him win, honestly. I mean, I thought he ran a very good race in the Louisiana Derby. Muth is a deserving favorite, doing what he did in the Arkansas Derby and getting back on track. And he had a little bit of a layoff coming into the Arkansas Derby. Imagination is going to run to the level of his competition, right? I mean, he'll probably be right there with Muth at the finish. It's the way he is.
He loves to try and give poor old Bob another heart attack every time he runs. Every single time.
So, I mean, this is a really good Preakness. I wish we had Sierra Leone. I wish we had Forever Young, the Japanese horse, to come back again. It would make it a sensational Preakness. But you got those three horses that all have a very strong chance in this race, I think, to finish ahead of the Kentucky Derby winner.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a very good betting race indeed, which makes it a good race. Last year, it was a good betting race. I'm still parched that Blazing Sevens didn't win because I was all over him like a rash. I had him in every single wager I could possibly have him. I was going to fly home first class for a change. I mean, you're used to it, Randy, but I'm not. So.
You have me confused with Jerry Bailey. He's the first place.
That's right, yeah.
I'm in Comfort Plus or Coach. I think first class is overrated.
So, Zoe, I wanted to ask you this because you see Baffert in Santa Anita virtually every single day. And he has been so good about not showing any bitterness or animosity about his whole situation with the Kentucky Derby. He said all the right things. In the interview coming up with him, it's more of the same. He's obviously doesn't want to get into any more kind of controversy. But having said that, and as well as Bob, don't you think he would, this one would be extra special after, just like last year, he wins it and he can't run in the Derby. Considering the circumstances, do you think that he might put this kind of Preakness win above some of the others?
Probably not above the horses that he won the Derby with. No. Right. No. I mean, ultimately, Bob's in the business of winning Kentucky Derbies. And Preakness is always icing on the cake, and it's marvelous. but he is in the business of winning a Kentucky Derby, and that is the bulk of his business. If you saw what he bought at the 2-year-old sales this year, that is the bulk of his business. He wants to get back there and drop the mic, and I don't blame him. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. It was a big weekend in New York for Keeneland Sale grads. Antiquarian won the Grade 3 Peter Pan. Joey Freshwater won the Grade 3 Run Happy Stakes. In 2023 alone, September grads have won 202 graded stakes and 37 Grade 1s. That's a lot. All right, make plans to attend the Keeneland September sale. It does start on September the 9th. I will be there with bells on, and we'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
At Keeneland, a horse will always be measured in hands. Hands that see, that sense, that speak. Hands that hold our sport to a higher standard. Not for our sake, but for theirs. For the love of the horse, for generations to come.
This week's Fastest Horse of the Week brought to you by my man, Two Phils, one of the fastest sires at WinStar Farm. And after this year's Derby, we can now say that his 105 Beyer speed figure in the 2023 Derby in defeat is now faster or equal to every Derby in the last 16 years. We can up it by one. At WinStar, they say Two Phils is hard spun take two. 2 stakes wins. Just like his sire, they won the same Derby prep, the Jeff Ruby Stakes, with the same 101 Beyer speed figure, and he finished second in the Kentucky Derby, just like Hard Spun did. A 4-time stakes winner by combined 26 lengths. Two Phils now stands at WinStar Farm for $12,500. Now, Fastest Horse of the Week. No surprise, trained by Charlie Appleby. He was shut out perhaps on Kentucky Derby weekend, but he was back in business with Silver Knot. Also, he had Nation's Pride in the Man o' War at the Belmont at Aqueduct meeting this past Saturday. Silver Knot up on the engine all the way around and ran a 106 Beyer speed figure. That's the same figure that First Mission ran in the Alysheba 1 week previous, one on dirt, now this one on grass. Silver Knot, Godolphin, Charlie Appleby, our Fastest Horse of the Week. TDN Writers Room, as always, brought to you by the Green Group, a tax accounting and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred racehorse and breeding industry, and especially specializing, is that right? Especially specializing in saving you money on your taxes.
We welcome in now the Green Group guest of the week. It is none other than Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. He's going to have a big weekend, presumably at Pimlico, because he's got 2 very good horses in the Preakness. Muth is the 8-5 morning line favorite. Imagination is in there at 6-1. Bob, thanks for joining us. My first question is, between Mystic Dan and your horses, do you have an advantage because you're fresh, you missed the Derby, no fault of your own, of course, and now you're coming in with rested horses going against a horse that had to fight the war 2 weeks ago?
I don't, it's hard to really answer that because it's a good question, but I'd rather come in there with a good horse than a fresh horse. And I think all the horses that I won the Derby with, that I won the Preakness with, that means they were in the zone, they were doing well, and I'm sure Mystic Dan wouldn't be there unless Kenny thought he was doing really well. So I think it's a big, I don't think it's an edge. I think we're coming off a little bit of a layoff, but I think the trip is more important.
So, Bob, we know you were happy to see Kenny get his first Kentucky Derby win. He said you gave him a nice congratulatory phone call. Spent a half hour or so with him on the phone. But it's human nature when you're watching the Kentucky Derby and you know that your horse beat that horse in the Arkansas Derby fairly decisively, to kind of do the what if in your mind. How did you reconcile all that watching the Derby?
When you have 20 horses, Randy, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if we would have broken slow or something, that's water under the bridge. What happened a week ago. It doesn't matter now. It's who got the trip, and I think Mystic Dan figured on the top 5, and he got the trip, and that's what he needed. He needed to get the trip, just like some horses didn't get the trip in there. And so the Derby with 20 horses, that's what makes it so exciting, and it was exciting to watch, And so for it to come down just noses apart, I mean, we haven't seen that since Cavanier, and I was on the wrong end of that deal.
There was a lot of bumping and jostling, and you mentioned that the Derby was separated by just pretty much a head between the top 3. What were your thoughts of the aftermath of the photo and everything that happened afterwards?
Well, I mean, when you watch it live, Zoe, I didn't really see anything. And it's the Derby. They're at the end of the race. They're tired. They're just laying it out there, and there might have been a little rubbing going on, but I've seen it's just a tough race. We have 20 horses. It's going to happen. There were 13 fouls probably committed the whole race around there. That's the way the Derby is. I've been in there with the best horse and got completely wiped out, and that you just walk away like, I didn't get the trip, and it's all about the trip, the Derby.
Well, Bob, we just had the draw. What did you make of the draw? You got the 4-hole with Muth, and then you get the 9 on the outside with Imagination.
Well, yeah, it's all right. I think they're decent draws. They're not bad. Every time I draw the one there, it makes me sick to my stomach, and I end up winning the race. So sometimes you can overthink the draw. I think that the break is so important, no matter where you draw.
Bob, every trainer in the country dreams of winning the Kentucky Derby, yourself included. But lately, a lot of trainers have seemed to de-emphasize the Preakness. We see so many horses going from the Derby to the Belmont. I get the impression that I'm sure you put the Derby number 1, but you seem to really love the Preakness, maybe more so than some of your contemporaries or some of your rivals. What is it about the Preakness that you like this race so much?
Well, when I got into the game, Bill, when I went first time, 1996 with Cavanier, it was, the Preakness was still huge. All the good horses, you went to the Preakness, the second leg. All 3 legs were so important. And so that's when people were tuned in, watching, looking for the next the Triple Crown winner. And so it was always, you had to go, you felt like you had to be there and compete and see if you could win that race, because it's a very important, very historic, traditional race.
So it looks like Muth is going to be the favorite for the Preakness, Bob. Take us through his 3-year-old season. So he ran a good race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He caught Fierceness on one of Fierceness's best days. Take us through what's been going on with him now, his entire 3-year-old season up to now.
Well, we were pointing, we ran him in he won that stakes, was going 7/8. Then I wasn't sure where I was going to run him next. And I thought, the Arkansas Derby would be a great spot to ship and run. It's a big race. And he handled that very well. And we were fortunate to win that. And he came out of it well. He looked like he handled it well. The distance didn't bother him at all. So, you're always wondering, he had great 2-year-old form. He was precocious. He was really a really good 2-year-old, and he got beaten in the Breeders' Cup by a really good horse that day. And so he's come back, and he's just keeping his form, and he hasn't regressed, which you want to see in a 3-year-old.
What kind of trip does he need to have a winning race, Bob? I know we were all jostling around with Juan Hernandez this morning. He came up to speak to you in the grandstand. What kind of trip does he need?
Like any horse, you need a clean trip. You want a trip where you want to break well and get him in good rhythm. That's the whole thing, is get your horse in a nice rhythm, relaxed. And when they turn for home, you hope when he asks him to run, there's something in the left to finish the race. That's all you can ask for.
Bob, Zoe, Randy, and myself have done a lot of talking about the Triple Crown spacing. As I'm sure you're aware, this is a topic that gets hotter and hotter every year. Even had to wait on Kenny McPeek till the last minute to see if Mystic Dan was going to run. How are you on the spacing? Is the 2 weeks, 3 weeks, is that set in stone? Do you think that's something we shouldn't mess with, or should there be more time between the races?
Well, I mean, I grew up when I came into the thoroughbred world. That's the way it was. So I'm a traditionalist. I think it gives it more meaning if you do win the Triple Crown. I'm not saying this because I've already won the Triple Crown, but I know it was so hard. I went through it 5 times, and every time I walked away there, but I really feel that, if you did it at the spacing, it would be, if they would have been spaced out, you'd probably have more Triple Crown winners, if they had more time. So it might be easier, I think, if you had but you still need a superior horse. And that's what the Triple Crown is all about. And I finally won it, but I've won it with 2 superior horses.
So you've got not just Muth, but as we pointed out, you have imagination going. 4 of his last 5 races have been decided by either a nose, a head, or a neck. We've all seen horses that sometimes have a tendency not to want to separate from their competition. He's had good competition, obviously. What do you do with imagination to sort of rectify that kind of thing?
Well, I think a lot of it, Randy, is that he's just mentally immature. And I can see since the Santa Anita Derby, he's progressed. He's getting stronger, and he's been working with Muth his last 2 outs. And Muth, to hang with Muth is pretty tough, and he's been hanging with him pretty well. And so I really think that Muth is helping him. If he's going to get beat, he might get beat by a workmate, because he knows what he's dealing with. So hopefully he gets next to him and says, "Hey, I remember you."
Well, let's talk Frankie, Bob, because Frankie rides Imagination. When he rode Imagination in the Santa Anita Derby, he was looking for his 7th in a row at Santa Anita. He'd already beaten you once with your own horse, with Kinza, with Nothing Like You, with a sensational ride in the Oaks. What does Frankie bring to the table? Not only is he fun, but he seemingly is always in the right spot.
I love about Frankie, like all the great jockeys, you do not have to give him any instructions. He knows what he has to do. He knows the horse really well. And he'll just ask you if, the horse is doing well. So, and I think he sort of figured him out. He said in the Santa Anita Derby, he thought the horse in the lead, if he would have just lasted a little bit longer, maybe it would have been different. I don't know. He did get beat by a nice horse. And so it's one of those things where he likes, this horse is, got into competition, and he'll come back, look like he was beat, came back. But I think he's just getting better with every race. And hopefully, he's going to have to improve if he's going to win. And I think he has improved. And so I think I'm coming in there with 2 nice horses and just looking for, it's going to be a good race. There's just nice horses in there.
Bob, once upon a time, we went through this long period where if horses sold for a bundle at the yearling sales or the 2-year-old sales, just about every one of them didn't work out. Now we have your horse costs $2 million. He's a grade 1 winner, Muth. Sierra Leone costs $2.3 million. He's a grade 1 winner. Flightline cost $1 million. How do you agree that people have gotten better at this over the years, and that these really expensive horses more often than not do pan out? And if so, why is that?
Well, I remember I purchased Forestry. He was a topper in the July sale, and he turned out to be a really good horse. So it can happen. I think a lot of horses, it depends. They go through they're like athletes. Muth, when as a 2-year-old, he was just outstanding. I mean, he was a no-brainer. He was just had great pedigree, moved beautifully. So that's.
So you've been on both ends of the spectrum, right? When you started off, when you first made your big splash in the Kentucky Derby and in the Triple Crown, it was with the Calbred and Cavalier, and then you came back with Silver Charm, and then the Fish, Real Quiet. We always said back then, man, if he ever got these really expensive yearlings, there's no telling what he would do. Do you pinch yourself a little bit now when you think back to where you were in 96, 97, 98, compared to all the big bloodstock you have in your barn now?
Well, the business has changed, Randy. You can't buy real quiets for 17,000 anymore. Right? Everybody is more educated. I remember when Lucas came in there, he just came in there, and when you come from the quarter horse world, we have a certain eye for speed and whatever. And when I came, my first thoroughbred I ever bought was 30 Slews. He won the Breeders' Cup, sprint. So it's people are. They're figuring out what we like and what we like to buy, so everybody's just competing now against each other.
Bob, you're very active at the sales, and you've been supremely active this year already at all the 2-year-old sales. What is the one key thing, without giving anything away, that you like to see from a horse when you're looking at it?
Without giving anything away?
Come on, Bob.
Hey,
secret.
I have a certain feel and an eye for a horse that I've had. And sometimes I can't explain it. I just see something. I go, there's something about it. And so I think from experience, from buying horses, things have worked out. A lot of his experience, Zoe, it's just from buying horses. I know, well, that's not going to work. I had one that looked like that. So it's like you're going to make mistakes. And hopefully you learn from your mistakes and from from the good ones that you purchased. But it's still difficult, and you're not going to be right every time. But we try to stay pretty close.
Bob, at one point it looked like Muth might be the second string on your barn, and that's no knock on him, but you had Nisos who just looked like an absolute freak. Can you give us an update on him? How's he doing, and when might we see him at the races again?
Yeah, I'm still taking my time with him. I just want to give him more time. It's just he's a horse that is so talented, and so I just letting him grow into himself. So there's really no rush.
How are the 2-year-olds looking?
We're barely just getting them going. It's hard to really get a line on them. So far, everybody says I'm getting good info on them, good intel. The intel is great. Until they work 5/8, you never know.
Bob, for people that don't know your operation in Southern California, can you just explain how your team works, not only at Santa Anita, but also over at Los Alamitos with Mike Marlowe?
Yeah, what I do is I keep around 48 horses at Santa Anita, and I'll keep another, when we're maxed, another 50 at Los Alamitos. Those are horses usually that we freshen up, or 2-year-olds that come in, because I really don't start out with that many 2-year-olds people think I do. I probably start out with 30, maybe 35, 40 colts, and that's it. And so I try to keep my numbers down because I want to be able to. They're easier to manage that way, and so it's when they're ready to come to Santa Anita. I have Mike Marlowe down there. He used to work for Wayne Lucas. Farrow came from there. Justify, he'll tell me, hey, this one's ready to make the move. This is a good horse. And Mark Marlowe, he's usually pretty on. When he tells me we have somebody special, he's really on, because he's told me that with Farrow, Justify, and all the good horses that went through there.
Bob, you've got some of the wealthiest owners in the game, some of the most loyal owners in the game, and not just the guys that are new guys, but the guys that have been with you for decades. How do you juggle them all? How do you manage somehow to keep everyone happy? I mean, to me, it seems impossible.
Well, I mean, everybody, it's equal opportunity in my barn. So the horses, they know that I'm going to do the best job for them. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to take care of their investment and their horses. And we have a good friendly rapport. We have mutual respect for each other, and you have to have that.
Well, Bob Baffert, I want to thank you very much for being the Green Group Guest of the Week this week. Hopefully you'll have a big weekend in Baltimore at the Preakness, and it's going to be a lot of fun, Bob. Thanks so much for joining us.
So, Bill, who do you like in the Preakness?
Muth. I'm not saying that just because I'm talking to you. I like Moose. And these two knocked Mystic Dan before the Derby, so.
We did. Yeah.
He's going to be tough. The Derby winner's always tough.
Right. Once again, Bob, thanks so much for your time, and good luck at the Preakness, and maybe we'll see you at the Belmont at Saratoga as well. And good to have you back on the Triple Crown Trail.
Thank you.
As the Green Group Guest of the Week, trainer Bob Baffert will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation from Lynn Green et al. At the Green Group. For more information on finding out what the Green Group can do for you. You don't have to be in the horse business. It helps to be in the horse business, but give them a call or log on to www.greenco.com for more information.
When it comes to the horse industry, tax laws are complicated and unique. That is why most people overpay on their taxes. Why not get a second opinion from the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the thoroughbred industry? With over 800 clients in the horse business alone, the Green Group has the expertise to save you taxes. There is a reason the most successful owners, breeders, trainers, vets, and horsemen use the Green Group as their tax advisors. We save you taxes. Over the past 40 years, the Green Group founder, Len Green, has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport. His DJ stable competes at the highest level and has received the game's most prestigious honors. Len Green's in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with current-edge tax-saving strategies, produces positive tax-saving results for clients. Take advantage of this special offer. The Green Group will give you a complimentary and confidential review of your tax return. Contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com.
Can't get out of my mind. I saw him down at OBS for the 2-year-old sale. His breeze was spectacular. And then topped the sale. Everything he did in his career, breaking his maiden sprinting on the dirt.
Very, very impressive debut.
Winning a grade 1, stretching out.
Breezing through the stretch. He's the real deal.
And then the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar.
He's just too good. Cornish wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
And then going on and being a champion 2-year-old. Extremely difficult to do.
Obviously, Quality Road has done enough for all of us to understand what he's doing. I thought Wasted Tears was a very, very good mare, Najran mare. She obviously won the Ginny Wiley Stakes. Also, course record holder in the Ouija board. So, really good female family, good sire line. Was delighted with him physically and was excited to breed to him.
It's very important for us to breed physical to physical and try to get the best physical cross. We're very happy with the foal we've gotten. He's got a great natural shape to him, a great hip, got a lot of power behind, very nice balance to him, plenty leg. You always like to see a horse have enough leg. Also, he's a very intelligent foal, you know, pricks his ears, has good presence to him.
This is a Cornish filly out of Anima Gemella. Been a standout since she was born. Very strong, very well made, good mover. Really, you know, everything we were hoping for.
You know, he's got a really sharp eye, good shoulder, neck set, nice top line, like the way he finishes out behind, but he really sort of travels over the gown smoothly and just has a real sharpness to him about his body and is exactly what I was hoping for, but I mean, we all know that hopes and dreams are not actually what they always pan out to be, so when they pan out, you double down.
In this week's edition of First Thing First, I caught up with jockey Mike Smith and Phil D'Amato to discuss the Santa Barbara Stakes. Musical Rhapsody takes down the Santa Barbara Stakes, and I have trainer Phil D'Amato to my left, but we're going to start with a rather perspiring Mike Smith to my right. What did you tell me when you came up here, how tired you were?
Well, she just pulls so hard. You know, she's not very big at all, but boy, she's just tough and she loves to run, man. She really loves her job, and when she gets amongst them, or she gets pretty aggressive and she just wants to beat up on them, so she wears you out a little bit.
She's 880 pounds. I mean, I feel like I'm about the same size as her and probably weigh about the same. Mike, what is the key to riding a small little filly that pulls?
You know, Phil's really got her going well. His crew at the barn, they got her to relax a lot better. Since the first time I rode her, she's even, believe it or not, she's even a whole lot better. And he's got her doing well and about as good as a little filly could do. And I just pointed her in the right direction and got her out. I might have got her out a little too soon. It's a quarter of a mile is a long way for her to be in front. She'll run down anything, but you gotta time it right.
Did you know you timed it right, Mike?
I didn't mean to time it that close. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate it.
All right, Phil, you mentioned how tough she is. What kind of filly is she like in the morning then?
Yeah, I mean, she's like she is in the afternoon in the morning, and it's just a perfect fit because Mike's so good with these strong horses, getting them to take a deep breath and relax and finishing. And ever since I put him on her, he's done just that and gotten the most out of her. So hopefully, she's got 2 in a row, and hopefully she can keep rolling.
Does she have any quirks about her other than she pulls like a train?
No, she's a very straightforward, good training filly. Again, she's a small little thing, but I don't think she knows it, and a lot of attitude to her, but very straightforward.
Small but mighty. Well done, Phil.
Thank you.
Musical Rhapsody takes down the Santa Barbara Stakes.
Many thanks to Mike and Phil for that. And that filly, yes, she did literally weigh in at 880 pounds, and she now is an absolute little beast. Small things do come in good packages. All right, want to remind you that Santa Anita will be back this coming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you're looking to gamble and watch the Preakness, not only can you do that at Pimlico, but you can come to the Great Race Place and do it there too.
So the story of Tyler Gaffalione and Sierra Leone and the bumping and pushing and lugging in of the Kentucky Derby has not gone away. And here's how it was resolved finally by the Churchill Downs stewards. As we remember, they did not hang the inquiry in the Kentucky Derby. All 3 of us were in unanimity about that was a huge blunder not to put the inquiry up. Randy Moss said they blew it big time. That's what he had to say on the show last week. So now, a few days later, they meet with Tyler Gaffalione, and lo and behold, they fine him $2,500. Now, here's what I don't quite get. If he didn't do something so bad that the horse should have been disqualified, how do you justify a fine? I mean, I know you sometimes can do that, but they seem to be talking out of both sides of their mouth. If they had put the inquiry up, if they had taken the horse down, then maybe they do give him a fine. But I find it kind of contradictory that they decide not to take the horse down, and because of that, so Tyler didn't do anything wrong. They didn't take the horse down. Oh yeah, Tyler did do something wrong. We're fining him $2,500. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
No, nothing about this thing makes a whole lot of sense. They blew it from start to finish. Now, I'm a big fan of situations in which you don't penalize the horse player necessarily if there's interference in a race that didn't affect the outcome of the finish. Leave the number up and then fine the jockey or even suspend the jockey in that matter, and don't penalize the bettors for something like that. But in this case, the 2 horses finished this far apart. I mean, if you completely ignore what happened from the quarter pole to the finish, and you just look at the Heisman stiff arm there right at the wire, and they finish, a nose or a half a nose apart, that's enough justification right there for a disqualification. But then you had all the other stuff before that was much worse than just the little thing right at the finish line where he sticks his arm out. There's a lot of things about this whole thing that just really drive me crazy. First of all, something's really got to be done about this in the thoroughbred industry, right? There were $75 million that were wagered in the Kentucky Derby on the exacta, the trifecta, and the superfecta. As we sit here right now, this could never happen in any other business or any other sport. We don't know if the stewards took a vote. If they did take a vote, was it unanimous? Was it 3-0 to leave the number up? Was it 2-1? We have no idea. And it's like this at every racetrack in America. Nobody ever knows who voted what. Was it a unanimous verdict or not? I mean, to be honest with you, their deliberations should actually be live broadcast to the racetrack and to the simulcast players as the stewards are in the room trying to figure out what's going on. If the stewards call the jockeys, which is silly to begin with, but if they call the jockeys to ask the jockeys what happened, that should be public, that should be taped and should be a matter of public record. If they call the riders in the next day to talk about what happened during the running of a race, there should be a complete transcript or it should be videoed. All of this should be transparent. But here we don't even know if they took a vote. And if they did take a vote in the steward's room, who was in favor and who wasn't? And this is the Kentucky freaking Derby we're talking about here. With 70, you talk about a lack of transparency. Oh, my God.
And we're screaming out for it in this sport, some transparency. And I mean, that's the biggest race in the world, basically. It is the biggest race. And they went through this with maximum security. They never offered a statement. They never let anything out. Well, you don't think they didn't learn something from that? I just don't understand. And finding Tyler Gaffalione $2,500, when they said he fined him, I'm like, oh, maybe he's got to give the $500,000 back because that was the difference between second and third. That's a fine that I could live with. Yeah, give the guy $500,000 because he was probably mugged. They should have flip-flopped them. It was ridiculous.
Zoe, as an ex-rider, did Tyler do anything wrong? It seems to me that he was doing everything under his power to keep that horse from stop to not lug in, but it was out of his control,
was out of his hands. I mean, I mentioned last week, the only thing harder than riding a horse that lugs out is one that lugs in. And he lugs in bad. Next time you see him, he better have some better equipment on rather than just D-bit. It really wasn't Tyler's fault, but hey, you can't touch a horse. You can't touch a horse in the running of the race. I'm sorry. Like, that's an instant disqualification. Touching another horse. I don't care if it's by accident or not. And your whip touching the other horse, you can't do that. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. I also want to remind you guys that in the case of maximum security, they never hung an inquiry on that race either. No. It took John Core to finish 17th or 16th or something.
They didn't learn a damn thing. They did not learn a thing.
Yeah. It certainly doesn't seem like it. All right. Well, hopefully there's no controversies coming up in the Preakness this weekend, and see if the Maryland stewards can get the job done. And I have confidence that they will. So,
the TDN Riders Room brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. On Friday night, Nisi Marie was named the champion Pennsylvania-bred 3-year-old filly, and on Saturday, she showed why. She became the newest PA-bred graded stakes winners with a last to first run in the Bogey Stakes at Aqueduct of Grade 3 to get up in the final strides. Congratulations to Nisi Marie, and all of Pennsylvania will be watching as the PA bred and PA sired Uncle Heavy runs in the Preakness Stakes on Saturday. Uncle Heavy is by Pennsylvania sire Social Inclusion. Remember him? Trained by Butch Reed and bred by Butch's sister-in-law, Barbara Reed. For more information on breeding and racing your very own Pennsylvania bred, visit www.pabred.com and click on the Stallion and Boarding Farm directory at the top of the homepage. Any further questions, you can call. Here's the number, 610-444-1050.
The state of Pennsylvania has the best breeders program in the entire United States.
When you buy a yearling, it's a little bit like buying a lottery ticket. And we are trying to provide the lottery ticket that the likelihood is to hit the jackpot.
Angel of Empire wins the Arkansas Derby and wins it clear.
Uncle Heavy late, it's a photo finish.
Pennsylvania and the PHBA have the best state-bred program in the country, bar none.
The winner, Uncle Heavy. He's a 3-year-old bred in Pennsylvania.
Pegasus World Cup.
And from PA, we talk the first Grand 3. And yeah, you are hearing me correctly. I didn't say pre, I said 3. Listen to this. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by the first Grand 3, a trio of races that kicks off with this week's Preakness and is followed by the California Crown on September the 28th at Santa Anita, and then followed by the Pegasus World Cup on January the 25th at Gulfstream Park. That's all part of a $25 million plus racing series for owners, jockeys, and fans. There's a $7.5 million in bonus opportunities for owners, and fans, that's very important, can win up to $5 million in the first Grand 3 Pick'em Challenge. For more information, visit preakness.com/firstgrand3.
All right, so weekend racing last week. I love these races at Gulfstream with the have the preps for the Royal Ascot races, and there are two, one for fillies, one for males. The filly race was won by our friend John and Glenn Green from DJ Stable with a horse by the name of Bullet, who ran his eyeballs out. Thought he was very impressive. Matter of fact, on paper, I looked at him. He's by Warfront out of a Tappet mare. Can this guy really win at 5 furlongs? Well, not only did he win at 5 furlongs, he won very impressively. And as you were talking about the first Grand 3, I was texting our friend John Green, and I said, is he definite for Royal Ascot? He says, not definite yet. We've got to work out some plans. But just like you said, Kenny McPeak was going to run in the Preakness. They're going to run in Royal Ascot. How could they not? And then you have the other end of the spectrum where you had a $9,000 OBS fight by the name of Gabaldon won the race for Colts. Don't know what the plans are for that horse, trained by Jose D'Angelo. But I just think that's a really good and very clever concept. And boy, if I can get some odds, you find out what the bookmakers can give me over in England on Bullet, would you, Zoe? And see if I can get a bet down on him.
Let me think. A $425,000 Warfront filly that just won really impressively. When you think about last year when the Golden Palm was first introduced and we saw, what's his face go over there? Why can I not think of it?
George Weaver.
George Weaver. Sorry, George. George go over.
Yeah, Crimson Advocate.
Yes. She won it last year and she went over and was successful. Now, a lot of the horses coming from America are going to be ground dependent, and you never know what you're going to get pretty much till the week of the race. This past week in England has been summer, and this is the only few days of summer that they've had for 6 months. So there's no telling what they're going to get in June. But Bullet was extremely impressive coming from dead last and just slingshotting around the field. She took the lead at the 8th pole and drew off to win by 2 3/4 lengths. And that's the type of horse that you need to go over there to Royal Ascot with. As far as Gabaldon, he's got speed. And that's not a bad thing either. I'm not sure when you look at him and then you look at some of the monsters that won at Keeneland for Wesley Ward, you know, how that figures, because Wesley had a few runaway winners that will be going to Royal Ascot as well, and they'll all be running against one another. But yeah, these two are winning you're in races. It's extremely clever. We had a race at Santa Anita last week, which was a winner you're in pretty much for the Grade 1 Coral Eclipse. Now, it doesn't look like Little Red Feather are taking Gold Phoenix, but it is a very innovative idea by First Racing and Aidan Butler to get these things and people talking about it, because these are the races that people in America have never seen anything like it, going to Royal Ascot or going to Sandown. It's a whole different type of racing that once you've got a taste of it, you want more.
Mm.
Yeah, in the Colts division, Gabaldon was 16-1. The runner-up, Reach for the Rose, was just under 10-1. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I would like it a lot better if Bullet had run faster than the boys. She actually ran 3/5 of a second slower than the male division, but she also broke a bit slowly and was next to last.
She was very
in the
wide.
9-horse field. Yeah, and she was visually very impressive and lost a lot of ground. So you can't just go, I know I'm a time guy, but you can't always just go by final time when you're looking at these horses.
Well, we mentioned earlier that Peter Pan was won by Antiquarian, Todd Pletcher, the trainer. Arcangelo won the Peter Pan last year and came in to win the Belmont afterwards. Nice enough horse. I wish I owned him. I don't think he's going to be a major threat in the Belmont. I think Pletcher might win the Belmont with fierceness. We have no idea. He hasn't had much to say, but with that horse's nature of running a good race every other race, and the fact that he might be able to get loose and lonely on the lead in the 1.25 miles, that takes some getting used to, the 1.25 miles Belmont Stakes. But Randy, did you see anything in Antiquarian that gets you too excited?
Well, I mean, arguably he ran the best race of his life. On numbers, he ran just as fast as he did in the Louisiana Derby, just against easier competition. Well, he had a 92 buyer in the Louisiana Derby, finishing 6th in that race, losing by 4 lengths. And then he comes back and he beats a decent field. The Wine Steward's a pretty nice horse. It was his second start of his 3-year-old season. He had that really good second-place finish in the Lexington Stakes. But to me, Antiquarian looks like sort of an Ohio Derby, Iowa Derby kind of horse, really, instead of a Belmont horse. But I'm sure he'll run in the Belmont because he won the Peter Pan.
Right.
It's going to be super interesting to see what kind of horses are running in the 1.25 mile race at Saratoga, the Belmont at Saratoga. It's going to be a completely different race. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Well, Sierra Leone, of course, is laying in wait. That big layoff in between the two races. So it will perhaps get maybe we can get all, if Muth wins on Saturday, do you think he will go back in the Belmont, Randy and Zoe?
No, I do not.
Why not?
Because, Bob, maybe the 1.25 miles would make it a little bit more likely, to Zoe's point. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but it just hasn't been Bob's MO with horses that don't win the Preakness necessarily to come back, like National Treasure didn't.
Right.
But, I mean, back in the day, like, he had horses that Point Given that lost the Kentucky Derby, came back and won the Preakness and were extremely impressive in the Belmont Stakes. But I would think he probably would reset, start thinking about the Breeders' Cup Classic and take him back to California and figure out, the best way to get him from point A to point B from his barn at Santa Anita. Just my opinion.
I don't know. It's going to be a whole different race going 1.25 miles. I can see a lot of people wanting to prove their horses over the classic distance, the Kentucky Derby distance of 1.25 miles. So it's going to be really interesting to see who runs. It's going to be usually, horses going into the Belmont and you're looking towards a stud career. I'm not knocking the Belmont by any means, but it's not really an American blazing thing. Say, hey, my horse won the Belmont. I'm going to breed all my mares to the horse that won the Belmont. That doesn't really happen. But at 1.25 miles, it's going to be a really good race. TDN Writers Room is brought to you by XBTV. Last week, we showed you a joint work between Muth and Imagination as they prepared for the Preakness Stakes on Saturday. And this week, we're going to do the same. Take a look at these two. Muth is on the rail and Imagination is on the outside, working 6 furlongs in 1:11 and 4. Now, last week, they worked 1:11 and 2. And we heard from Bob and the comment about these two workmates and perhaps that Imagination needs to learn a little bit. Now, when you look at the rider on Muth on the inside, he's got a double handful, feet on the dashboard. That is laser focus from Muth. And he is like that every single time he works. And then you got Imaginations getting niggled at and just asked a little bit, but he's keeping up. And he's keeping up with his buddies. Like, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And they're rolling down the lane and they hit the wire together. And then Muth is still cruising on out. And Imagination is still going along. But they finish head and head. So, I mean, visually, yes, Imagination did that much better. But that's the type of workhorse he is. I mean, Muth. And then Imagination on the outside. He's getting there. Slowly but surely, I think he's learning.
all the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
TDN Writers Room is also brought to you by our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds, and they had a big runner-up finish in the Man of War Saturday at the Belmont at Aqueduct meet when Ohana Honor ran down Nation's Pride right at the end to take second behind, of course, our fastest horse of the week, Silver Knot. Very strong effort at 1 3/8 for Ohana Honor, who previously had a 5-length win at Keeneland just before that in his first start ever at 1.5 miles. He's a 5-year-old son of Otter Code. Also, Final Boss appreciated the added distance on Sunday in a sharp allowance win for West Point, going 2 turns on the turf at Santa Anita. West Point co-owns that with Michael Talla. This Saturday, looking ahead, Jackson Traveler will seek to win the Maryland Sprint for the second time on Preakness Day at Pimlico. For more information on West Point and how they can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie, www.westpointtb.com.
Well, it's time to say goodbye, but before we do, I'm just kind of curious, what kind of car did you rent, Randy, to get out love?
Want to see? Okay, I'll show you. It's sort of a kind of a bad day for me. I lost my phone at the airport, but as a consolation prize, check this out.
Whoa!
Ta-da!
Yes. Thank you, Hertz.
Red convertible Mustang, so Randy can put the lid down and let his hair blow in the wind.
Yeah, and on a horse racing telecast or podcast, there you go.
Oh, Mustang, yep.
Red Mustang convertible. You can do a lot worse than that. All I need now is Lucy with her head hanging out the window.
Well, Hertz did you proud. That's some car. Anyways, all right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in this week. I want to thank our producers, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca, and also, of course, Bob Baffert, the Green Group Guest of the Week, and my partners, Zoe Cabin and Randy Moss. Have a great time at the Preakness, and we'll be back next week.
You ready?
Talking about who won the 149th running of the Middle Jewel of the Triple Crown.
That's horsepower right there. Randy's got horsepower. And there'll be no hiding, Randy. I'll be able to find you at Pimlico. I'll just look for the red.
Yeah, that won't be hard, Zoe, with that car.